And welcome back to Crash Media Paranormal. This is Craig, and this is my great buddy,
Ashley.
And tonight we're going to be talking about the science of the paranormal, and we're going to start right now. And welcome back. And as we were talking about a little earlier, I've been a little sick this week. I've had the RSV stuff going around our school, and it's been terrible. Ashley, you've had a couple of sick kids, and
Yeah, my kids have been sick. One of them just keeps getting one thing after the other. But they're both feeling a lot better now. So,
that's good.
yeah, there's just so much sickness going around. It's just,
it's insane. I was didn't feel too great this weekend. I was at a world language conference all weekend and got to present the curriculum that I've been working on for the past 8 years, which is now finally complete in Spanish and French, levels 1, 2, 3 in literature, and it's called Toucan Languages, and presented that to the state, and everything went really, really well. We got several new teachers using it, and just really enjoying that. Other than that, just been miserable. That was the highlight of my week, trust me.
Yeah.
So what are
I'm glad that went well.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're feeling better. So.
Oh yeah, it was really fun. Had a great time.
Yeah.
What are we talking about tonight, Ashley?
Well, we're going to talk about the science of the paranormal and kind of like answer the question, like, can science explain ghosts, hauntings, and other paranormal, events? And there's so much on this topic that would, you could really go in depth with. So we're not going to, dig too deep, but we are going to try to cover a few, basics within this topic. And so, because one thing that we do as well, especially like our team, we try to do all of our investigations very scientifically. Like we kind of we use certain equipment, and we don't just go just try to assign everything being paranormal. We try to investigate, we look at other possibilities, use scientific method along with equipment that will help us document certain things. And so but yeah, we're just going to kind of talk about it. And yeah,
that sounds good. And with us, sometimes we go very scientific, and we've been places where we've just had recorders and just winged it. But yeah, one of our goals as paranormal investigators is to find that supernatural science connection, and and we saw that in our last episode at Smith County Museum when we were lucky enough to catch a full body apparition on some of the scientific equipment we had, which was a full spectrum camera. So that was really cool.
Yeah. And if anybody, while we're talking about these things, anybody wants to throw anything in the comments, just go ahead. And also, if y'all see me start laughing, there is a ladybug that is flying around right in front of me. A few minutes ago, right before we started, like it almost hit me in the eyeball. So if y'all see me like freaking out or something, it's because a ladybug keeps, swooping down at me.
It's going to land right on your nose, like right here.
I know. That's what I'm afraid of. All right. So, yeah, just kind of like getting started. One thing that I wanted to kind of point out was, kind of like, what are the terms supernatural and paranormal? Because, we both, if people hear those terms kind of like interchangeably, but there's actually kind of a difference. Yeah. And to me, when I read some stuff, it kind of made a lot of sense to me. Just kind of like differentiating like the two words, supernatural and paranormal.
Right.
And so, so anyway, I'll get started. Let's see. All right. So the term supernatural, it refers to phenomena that kind of goes beyond or outside the laws of nature as we understand them. And so a lot of people, if you think about it, like a lot of people don't actually believe in ghosts and stuff like that, because if they put it in terms of supernatural, because it really supernatural goes against the laws of nature as we understand them, and so they think that there's really no science, behind it. It's just ghost stories, if
Right.
that makes
Oh
sense.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but think about it in the terms of paranormal. So, paranormal includes like unexplained events that don't yet have a scientific explanation, but theoretically can be studied and understood. So, think about it in terms like that. Paranormal, it can be studied scientifically, and you can have scientific evidence and proof to back it up that there is more you know, here that we're even aware of. There's things here, like you mentioned, the picture that we got
Mhm.
from the Smith County Heritage Museum. And if anybody missed that, it's on our most recent episode. We also talked about it on last week's podcast. It's a full spectrum camera. It can see on all those different like visible light spectrums that we can't see. And think about like animals; they can see things that
Oh yeah.
we can't see. Their eyes are so much more sensitive to different like frequencies and light spectrums. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
Our full spectrum camera proved that there was something there. We captured a full body apparition. There's something there that we were unaware of. Um, and so I'm going to look over here at the chat real quick if
Mhm.
you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, we've used everything from full spectrum camera to REM pods to things that manipulate, add to the magnetic field, like EM pumps. Because one of the theories out there is that the ghosts sort of, or the apparitions sort of respond to, electromagnetic field. So we try to pump up as much as we can and see if that can affect things. One of my favorite pieces of equipment is the SLS camera.
Hmm.
Using that basically a connect system. That's one of my favorite things. We got some good results from what was that? The facing the courthouse window, Pickens County Courthouse. We got some
Yeah.
things with that there, and
Mhm.
so I love a scientific approach, and then in some locations, I love just to get just get down and spooky, and and
Mhm.
have our recordings and just really enjoy the environment, enjoy the supernatural element of it.
Yeah.
And just sit in the dark. You know me. One of my favorite
Mhm.
things to do is just sit and listen. Like take a good 15, 20 minutes and just don't say a word and just listen to the environment.
Mhm.
Um, Not the most scientific thing, but it's one of my favorite things to do. Just
Yeah.
cut all the noise and just really take in your environment. And when you're
Yeah.
in a haunted hotel or a haunted hospital, that's a pretty fun thing to do.
Yeah. And you mentioned the SLS, and that was actually brought up in the comment section, the Connect software, and that like you were saying, that is something that we use is that Connect software with our SLS device,
Mhm.
and it can help us see things that aren't there. And one
Right.
thing that's really cool is when and this is actually going to be something that's featured on an upcoming episode, but I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of story about it. But um, we were at a location in Mississippi, and David had the SLS, and then Scott was actually standing over across the room, and David started picking up on a figure on the SLS. And I was sitting by David, so I actually looked over and I saw the figure, and I saw him kind of studying it and looking up, like trying to figure out. And it was dark in the room, but you could still see Scott enough. We're trying to figure out, like,
Mhm.
there's something registering on that SLS. The
Yeah.
Connect software was seeing something, and he didn't say anything. He was just looking, and so I was kind of looking at it and looking at him, and then, like a few seconds later, Scott reacts. And now Scott's across the room. He could not see the SLS. He reacts because he kind of
Oh yeah.
looked behind him and saw a shadow figure behind him, and there was kind of like a hallway. And he kind of like turned a little bit. He saw something there, and it kind of darted off down the hallway. And he reacts,
Oh
and
yeah.
then David's sitting there like, Scott, what just happened? And Scott was like, I saw something. There was something standing behind me. Um, and David and I just kind of laughed, and we are like, there was literally something standing behind you on the SLS.
Yep. Yep.
And so that right there, that's kind of like shows me that Scott had no idea we were looking at something on the SLS, but that device kind of validated what Scott saw. So that was really neat.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was there. That was really cool. That was a fun
Yeah,
session. That entire
yeah.
night was just really fun.
Mhm.
I
And
enjoyed that.
that'll all be featured on an upcoming episode. We just haven't finished going through all of our equipment and everything,
And all the
putting
evidence.
all the little
Yeah.
pieces together, and so everybody will get to see that. Um, but let's see. Oh yeah, in the comments some section somebody said, ghost hunting during a storm,
Oh yeah.
lots of energy. And so we've definitely experienced that.
At Pickens County Courthouse is one of the places we
Mhm.
experienced that.
Yeah, and also, just I think a storm that, energy in the atmosphere can really charge up paranormal activity. To me, it gives them kind of like something an energy to feed off
Yeah.
of, so it can really spike. And going with the scientific approach, you can back it up, and you can, record things to kind of like prove that. When we go on an investigation, whether it be like a public location or like a private case or whatever, we always um, record the weather, so like the dew point, the temperature, weather patterns of the day. We record all of those things because you can actually pick up on patterns. Um, you know, uh, it's really neat because you can really start to um, find things that maybe expect that tonight's going to be an active night,
Right.
because in the past those things, like certain storms or like whatever the weather, it does have something to do with all of that.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier about using an EM pump, that's what it's doing is just putting that energy into the atmosphere, and we're trying to do it
Yeah.
on a local level, within a room. But yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, storms are you can pump up that energy like crazy, and we've experienced
Yeah.
that before.
um and also just kind of like moving on to like common experiences and claims that people have,
Hmm.
um, and then trying to determine, use science to kind of like back something up or even explain it. Sometimes, like our tripwire before has gone off when there's lightning outside,
Yeah, yeah.
and so sometimes it can be explained. But I'm gonna just mention a few of them. We can kind of like discuss
Okay.
how we would investigate, and determine whether something is debunkable or if it's
Hmm.
paranormal. So the first one would be like ghost sightings, like apparitions, shadow figures, full-bodied, spirits.
Right.
Um, if we go to, let's say it's a private case, and then somebody tells us, "Hey, I'm seeing these shadow figures in my home," or "I've seen a full-body apparition." What are some things that we would do as investigators to investigate that?
Um, Definitely cameras. We would try to have as many cameras as we possibly can, not only just cameras, but full spectrum cameras, night vision cameras. Um, Also, the SLS camera would be great in that because if
Mhm.
you can, catch it in that form, anyway, that you can.
Mhm.
A lot of photographs. We want to, try to reenact whatever could have caused that apparition to appear in the first place. So role
Mhm.
playing. That's not exactly scientific, but we have gotten some really good results. It's almost like
Yeah.
creating ear cues, um, you know, using sounds, familiar sounds to the era where we believe the spirit may be from, to try to entice them to show up.
Yeah. Yeah, because ghost sightings, that's actually like extremely rare.
Yep,
Very
definitely.
few of us, like very few times, have even seen an apparition. And so we do use certain experiments like air cues
Hmm.
or role play or whatever to try to trigger something because, a lot of times it is just kind of like, hit or miss. So, it's like I said, it's extremely rare to actually see an apparition. And we just got extremely
Very
lucky
lucky.
at the County Heritage Museum. Right place at the right time. But it's a lot of times, if when we go to a place and like that's a claim,
Hmm.
someone maybe sees a lot of shadow figures or something. Sometimes just sitting there and observing, because you never know. Like if let's say someone might be by a highway or something, a car going by
Yeah,
can actually cast a shadow of something, and it looks like a shadow run down the hallway.
right.
And so, you really have to sit there and take in the environmental like factors and everything, see what all light contamination like could be coming through the window or just whatever. And so there's a lot of things like that. And when we can't rule out something, like then especially if we do have our equipment like a full spectrum camera to document something, that just really helps prove that there are the possibility of seeing these apparitions and shadow figures. Like it's real. It's just you have to,
You have to work for
you have to
it.
discover it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
have to research it and you have
yeah,
to actually investigate.
yeah. You
So,
actually have to investigate, and
mhm.
that's some things that I've seen. Some I don't know how to explain it, but you can't just walk into an environment and just start investigating. You've got to do a little
Yeah.
research. You've got to
Mhm.
figure out what the claims are. You've got to find those spots where you may, where things may have happened before, and so you can't just go in blind and just, hi, do
Mhm.
you know you're dead? You know,
Yeah.
just you gotta have some kind of game plan when you go on any
Yeah.
investigation.
Well, what about poltergeist activity? That's something that's very, very rare. True poltergeist activity, and if anybody doesn't know what that means, that's kind of like objects moving on their own, unexplained noises, any kind of like physical disturbance.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a ghost in your house or whatever, you might hear like footsteps and stuff like that. But it's actually pretty rare to have them actually able to physically manipulate something, make something move or whatever. How would we investigate those claims?
Hmm. Again, cameras on trigger objects, a lot of trigger objects. Find out
Mhm.
what has, whether it's plates, whether it's cups, whether it's dishes, whether it's cabinets. Old South Pittsburgh with the door that tends to be opened. We put a GoPro on that, and we did catch a little bit of possible paranormal activity with that. Also, tape. Using tape, marking where something is to see if there's any minute movements or so definitely painter's tape, GoPro cameras, something because this is something you want to catch in action.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't really say a DVR system. One of the problems that we're encountering right now with DVR systems is lag,
Mhm.
and which is great to have things on camera. It's great to have cameras set up throughout a location, but you want to be able to catch something real time. And
Mhm.
so I think the best bet would be, you know, I don't know, just really good
Yeah.
cameras, really good visuals, a lot of note taking.
Mhm.
What about you? What are your thoughts?
Um, another thing that I would do in order to try to debunk something like that, would be like the geophone, trying to see if something moves. Let's say you
Yeah.
have a drawer in a kitchen that opens up on its own a lot, or a door that opens. Use a geophone,
Hmm.
and because it detects like any minute like vibrations, and so you can tell it's a car, up the road,
Yeah.
a big heavy truck going by, is that causing like this and that. If you can rule out a lot of things like that, then you can start exploring, is this paranormal is happening. And I've lived in a house, not this one now, but I've lived in one before where things would move. I've had stuff like thrown across the room, and I wasn't an investigator then, and I wish now that I had have known what to do and had the equipment that I
Mm,
have to try to document that.
right,
Because that was definitely like something crazy going on over there. And it would have been really cool to back it up with science, but
right.
I didn't know how to do any of this then. But one thing to me that would be really cool is if you could document like a EMF spike
Mhm,
at the same time as something happening, like let's say a door opening. I would love to be able to test that with equipment to see the moment that something manifests enough to make a physical object move. What does that do to the electromagnetic field in that area?
right,
Is there a spike? Is there an increase in like the energy? I would like to be able to see or document something like that so we can say, okay, something's happening within this field of energy to in order for that something to be able to do that. That would be really interesting, um, to be able to document. Um, and then another thing is electronic voice phenomena,
mhm,
EVPs.
right,
Um, that right there, we use we use science to document the existence of those. Now, how can we explain that? Like, how can you explain something there speaking on a certain frequency that we can't hear, but our recorder can hear it? You can't hear it with your own ears, but you can have a recording to show people, like, hey, this was captured, and no one in the room said it, but
right.
there's clearly someone talking.
And that could be number one. We rarely go into a situation with one piece of audio equipment. We usually have several H4Ns. We usually have several digital recorders. We've even carried some analog recorders. But yeah, try to have, and also audio on some of the cameras. So I guess with that, you want to get as many versions of it as you can, because we've had the opposite. We've all been in a location where we've all heard a very audible voice, didn't register it all on tape.
Yeah. And so that
A
that kind of
reverse,
to
yeah,
me,
a reverse
it kind
EVP.
of categorizes back to supernatural because it's like it's beyond the laws of
Yeah,
nature as we understand them. How can a voice on a recording change? Because
right.
we've
We've
experienced
experienced
that.
that too. Yeah,
Mhm. We recorded something at Old South Pitts no, it was at
yeah, it was.
Old Harriman Hospital. We recorded an EVP. We all listened to it and everything. The EVP changed later on when we listened to it. What it said was different. What it, the pitch and tone of the voice changed. And to me, that's beyond possible. But it happened. We documented it. But so I would love to be able to explore that more and see like how scientifically could that happen?
Right.
Because it's beyond my understanding. That was
Yeah,
crazy.
that was a strange night. I really want to go back pretty soon.
Mhm. And in the comment it says, yeah, Audible is one of the easier paranormal activities to capture.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's really weird because it's like the visual anomalies are so rare, but EVPs are easier to get.
Yeah.
How is it? And so that's something that's really interesting to me. It's you can go to a location and rarely get an apparition caught on camera, but EVPs you can walk away with usually, at least a few of them, and so it's
Right. But
I don't know, I
also,
can't explain that.
yeah, also you've got to be really careful with that too. You've got to make sure that
Mhm,
you are using a scientific approach, because there's so many things out there that can be misinterpreted as an EVP. A stomach
mhm,
growl. I've heard a stomach growl that's been like, "You're going to die," but it's just Taco Bell. And I think we've all experienced that. We've heard animals, we've heard birds, and when it goes through these digital recorders, there's some changes, some frequencies, but it does sound like voices. So That's why, again, you've
Mhm.
got to have several different recording devices going, because you can hear something on one recorder, sounds like it's words, hear it on one that may be a little farther away or a little closer, and it's obviously a chair being dragged across the floor, something like that, someone moving. So you do have to be very careful, because not everything is an EVP, even though it may sound like words. And we've run into
Mhm.
that before. It's like, hey, look, I've got this really cool thing. And someone else said, yeah, I found that on my recording. And that's just someone over there whispering to their friend beside them. And so,
Yeah.
that's another thing where you've got to have a scientific approach, and try to get as much data as you possibly can
Mhm.
during a session.
Yeah. Well, and also, um, sometimes there's a lack of scientific explanation.
Right.
Like back when we were talking about the how the EVP can change, and just sometimes when you can't explain something, what happens when science cannot explain something, but let's say we actually document something
Hmm.
like that EVP that changed. um, what happens when science cannot explain something? We documented it, it happened, but when science just doesn't explain something, and I'm not talking about just like, supernatural, like ghost
Right.
stories or anything, but when we actually experience something that it does defy the laws of nature, but, you
So that
know,
would be labeled supernatural, correct?
yeah, yeah, but yeah, it's that's one thing I would love to be able to find, um ways to we just really have to get creative of ways to explore that more
Right.
with the with an EVP changing, or I'm just using that as an example. There's a lot of things that just we can't explain. Like,
Mhm.
the apparition that we caught with the ultraviolet on the ultraviolet spectrum, that's that's Un that's understandable when it comes to, like, science. Science, explains that,
Mhm.
how that could be possible.
Right.
Um, but I don't know, we've run into stuff before that science just can't explain.
And I think you had it when you said that we have to be creative, and that's one
Mhm.
thing. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, we are creative. Whoever came up with the idea of using a Connect system to hunt for ghosts, we are very
Yeah.
creative. We can find a creative solution. So just our community itself just has so much creativity, and you've got engineers out there who are paranormal investigators that are coming up with some really fabulous equipment,
Mhm.
almost monthly. There's always something new that we're like, "Ooh, have you seen this? Let's try this. Let's go buy this and see if it
Mhm.
works." And we've had some duds. We've had some things that stay in our equipment cases that we've used once and have never dug out again, and it may have been a couple of hundred
Yeah.
dollars worth of equipment there that we just don't use
Mhm.
anymore. But with creativity comes, some things are going to work, some things aren't.
Mhm. Well, let's talk for a minute about parapsychology.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
what is parapsychology?
All right.
It's the study of paranormal phenomena that fall outside the scope of mainstream psychology and science. So, it focuses on experiences and abilities that would be categorized like paranormal, but it's an actual scientific study. So, like a couple of examples of this that or they're included in these studies
Hmm.
are like extrasensory perception. So that's ESP.
Right.
That's the ability to gain information through the means other than known senses. So like telepathy, clairvoyance, things like that. Psychokinesis,
Hmm.
that's the ability to be able to physically move objects with your mind alone, um, and near death experiences, and then mediumship. Kind of
Right.
like with clairvoyance and everything, being able to communicate on a level like that's beyond how we do things with our recorders and all that. It's like a personal like connection that one person can um, they have that connection and communication with a completely different realm
Right.
without the need of recorders and things like that. And then also ghosts and hauntings.
Mhm.
So all of those things are covered within that study of parapsychology.
Right, right.
Um, yeah. So.
And parapsychology is a legitimate study in the
Mhm,
sciences. There are degrees in parapsychology. There are colleges that have classes on parapsychology. So,
mhm,
and they've studied it for years and years. Sort of like twin telepathy. I have several twin cousins in my family, and their level of being able to communicate without communicating is just
mhm.
it's spooky. I've seen I don't know. I've just seen so much where they're literally just sitting there talking, and no words are being exchanged. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are doing twin studies to find out. They always call it twin telepathy. We've got twin telepathy, and I believe it. Sometimes I
Yeah.
believe it, but
I think everyone on a certain level has, abilities to be able to be very perceptive to their senses. And think about like when you're in a car and you feel someone staring at you and you don't see them,
mhm.
but you can feel them looking at you, and you look over and somebody's sitting there staring at you,
Yeah, exactly.
and then you
Yeah,
look
yeah.
away. And sometimes we're unaware of it, but we're sensitive to the energies around us.
Hmm.
So I think everybody on a certain level, just a lot more people are not in tuned with it as others, but I think we're all capable
I think, yeah,
at a
and
certain level of
I
it.
remember when I was a kid, I could almost like read people. It's like I could tell things that people were going through. For example, for some reason I'll never forget this. We were like driving to town, me and my cousin who we were the same age, and there was a man in a wheelchair with like no legs, and I just turned to my cousin and said, "Oh, you see him? He lost his legs in the war." And he was like, "You always do that. You always say something about somebody that you don't know." And I don't know why he was mad. He was like, he wasn't happy. Yeah, that's weird. You always do. And I've never, and maybe 7 or 8 years old, and I've never forgotten that one little exchange in the back seat of a car. Um,
Yeah.
and you have kids. So have
Mhm.
you seen anything like that with your kids that's just like, you shouldn't know that, or how do you know that, or
Yeah, my kids actually freak me out a lot. Yeah, and they both, it's almost like different with each one, and I'm not saying they have any kind of like abilities or anything, but they are pretty perceptive,
Mhm.
and they like sometimes Lexi, especially when she was a little bit younger, she could tell me exactly what I was thinking, and I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Girl, that's scary." And so, yeah, and Paxton too. Um, yeah, it's kind of weird. And my mom and I hope she's okay with me telling this, but like my mom and we have this weird connection, kind of like that twin thing, but we're not
Mhm.
twins. She's my mom, but I don't know. Sometimes it's like I know exactly when she's about to call, or
Mhm.
same thing, we'll pick up the phone, call each other at the same time, but we'll have the same experiences. Like if I have some kind of like weird paranormal experience or something at my house, I'll call her, and it's like she literally had just had like kind of the same experience. And it's like it's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then like but yeah, we have this kind of like weird twin connection thing that sometimes like I can't explain that, but but that's the thing. Scientifically, it like with parapsychology, like it's a legit thing. I mean, they say it's highly controversial, but honestly, with like the research and everything that goes into paranormal investigating, there is science that backs it up.
Right.
So, these things, people might believe that it's more supernatural, like ghost stories and everything, but even that weird psychic, not psychic, but that weird connection that that,
That y
the Lord is talking about.
yeah, that you can
Um,
have with someone else. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and, like, with the thing that sometimes you can feel somebody, like, staring at
Mhm.
you, that behind you or whatever, like, we've all experienced that. I think
Right.
everyone has probably experienced that, and so you can't deny that that's weird
But
when that happens,
yeah,
and so yeah.
and look at the, animal kingdom, because
Mhm.
some animals have some abilities that we could never have, like echolocation with bats, dolphins. Um, having that sense of a predators nearby. I don't know, almost
Yeah,
like spidey senses. But,
yeah.
yeah, there's so many
Cats
things.
too.
Yeah, cats, yeah, exactly.
Well, dogs also, it's like they can tell when somebody's sick.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
they say that sometimes maybe a dog can kinda smell cancer
Mhm.
cells. I don't
Mhm.
know, but there's this, and you can actually like Google this and everything. There's stories of there's one cat in particular that lives at some nursing home. I can't remember where, but I know I've read this story several times. But there's a cat that when it would, right before someone would die, it would go in their room and it would not leave their room
Yeah.
until the person would pass away. And which kind of led to some superstitions that, oh, the cat's taking their soul or what. No, they're just perceptive. They know that something's about to happen. I know, like with me, with my one of my cats in particular, because I'm a cat lady. If
Yeah.
y'all didn't know, one of
I'm
my
a dog man.
one of my cats. Anytime I don't feel good, or if she can sense, like if I'm upset about something, she knows. She comes running. She puts
Mhm.
her paws like right on me and like gets right in my face. She has no a sense of personal space. She just wants to be like right here. But whenever something's wrong, she knows and she won't leave me until, I let her know it's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. So, yeah, so it's all that stuff, it's real. It's just we don't really understand it, but
Yeah,
it
and there's
is.
so many examples of it in nature that maybe there's something that we as humans used to could do, used to do on a regular basis, and it's sort of like gone away, but sometimes sort of rears itself. You never know. Which
Mhm.
that could be with spirits too. You know,
Yeah.
that could be. There's a spiritual world out there that we just can't see, and when
Mhm.
we move on, we don't really go anywhere. We just move to another like little level, and sometimes that level just sort of bumps into this level. So
Mhm.
you never know. The many worlds theory.
Well, and also, I think for someone who like is, spiritual and
Hmm.
like religious and everything, I think that even with those beliefs, a lot of this goes along with it. Some people think that, oh, this is, you know, against that, but really it's not.
No, yeah,
Like, I feel like there's, we were designed a certain way. And I think that it's something that, you know, I believe, in God. And so I feel like we were designed, like he doesn't make mistakes. Like
hmm,
we were designed to be perceptive
yeah, yeah,
of energies and stuff. And so for me, I feel like it all goes together and it's not something that should be separated. I feel like, we're not meant to understand everything.
right, yeah,
Um, but it's, you know, it's all spiritual.
right.
So,
And
and
let me ask
scientific.
you this.
Mhm.
And this could be a little controversial within what we do, but what do you think of psychics and mediums? What are your opinion with working with a psychic or a medium in the paranormal field?
I mean, personally, I think you have to be just from a logical approach, you have to be very careful
Hmm.
because I think that there are people out there that you can't trust when it comes to that kind of stuff. However, being a spiritual person, I do believe that God gave people certain gifts. And
Hmm.
again, people will try to say those things are, wrong or whatever. And I just feel like, honestly, I feel like they're gifts. And, I feel like there's reasons why some people are more perceptive and everything. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people, grandparents
Hmm.
in my family that I believe had, they were really, really connected with that part of them. And, and that I feel like it honestly, you know, helped them connect more to that spiritual side of themselves and
Mhm.
everything. But so for me personally, like I think that I do believe that some people do have certain abilities. Um, as an investigator, I try not to rely on that. Like
Right.
I want to rely more on the scientific side of it,
Right.
because you had to be careful. There's untrustworthy people out
Yeah,
there.
and when I started, doing this years and years ago, we did have some occasions where we had psychics come and join our group and everything, and 9.9 times out of 10, it was just, "What are we doing? What are" I remember at one time, I will say no names, and this was, like 15 years ago, but we were at a location and we had a guest psychic with us, and we heard a noise and she looked over and said, "Hey, there! Oh, I see a little girl. She's standing in the corner, and she's from the 1800s. Her hair's in pigtails, and she has braces on her teeth." Really?
Yeah.
1800s with braces on her teeth? And what? Not only was I laughing internally, but everybody's camera pointing to the corner, and then they spent like 30 minutes investigating that corner, and I'm just like, "What are we doing, folks?" But
Yeah.
also, I've seen someone just walk into an area and just get so freaked out that they had to leave, and we got evidence.
Yeah.
And that person did not claim to be a psychic. I think my
Mhm.
thing is if you claim to be a medium or you claim to be a psychic, I'm not convinced.
I think
Now,
you really have to trust the person, and
yeah,
I think you have to as an investigator, if you include that in your investigation, it's somebody that you really need to trust.
yeah, and you've got to have some experience with them to.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's such a weird area for me personally because I am not
Mhm.
sensitive whatsoever. I feel like I can walk in there, a ghost could practically be on top of me, and I would never know. I think I'm a cooler, and I've said that many times. I think I chase them away. I think my presence just chases them away. I think I can walk into an active room and then it just goes dead. But I might be the opposite of a psychic. But I don't know. It's just one of those things for me that I've been sort of dealing with in the paranormal field, and but I think you're right. I think if you really trust someone and trust their abilities and know them, because I do know, trust me, I do. One of my best friends in the whole world, and you know who she is. If she says she sees something, I 100% believe her.
Mhm.
And and then there's people, they could tell me all day that they see things, and I'm like, "Oh, cool, yeah, oh, that's great, yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful, that's great for you." But I do know a couple of people that if they say something, I'm like, "Totally believe you, 100%."
Yeah.
So it's one of those little gray
Well,
areas for me.
yeah. Well, kind of moving on, I did
Mhm.
want to mention a few things that can kind of explain paranormal or
Okay.
even not really so much debunk, but things that people do need to be aware of. And I think this is one thing that even people who are not involved in the paranormal need to understand, kind of like as well. But there are certain environmental and psychological, cognitive, and physical factors that could make you feel like you're experiencing something paranormal
Yeah.
when it's not. So like one thing, we do use high EMF, or we use EMF detectors to detect sometimes a location might have high EMFs.
Mhm.
Um, and when you are um, subjected to high EMFs for an extended period of time, it can actually cause
Yeah.
hallucinations, a feeling of unease. If you were walking to a room and you're like, it just, after being in there for just a little bit, you're like, I just feel uneasy in here. I don't, something feels off. You know, EMF can actually cause that,
Yes.
can cause paranoia. It can cause visual and auditory hallucinations.
Mhm.
So, and that's one thing, like Scott on our team is he works with like electricity and like stuff like that, and so he always goes around to make sure there's no like bad wiring
Mhm.
at a location, especially if we deal with like a private case, so like a client owned home or something. Make sure there's not high EMFs that are just like constantly coming from like bad wiring or whatever that could be causing a person to experience certain paranormal things. But another thing is something called infrasound,
Yeah.
which is the fear. It's called the frequency of fear.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of interesting because there's a frequency when when certain like sound is on. I think it's below like 20 hertz. It can cause sensations of dread, even visual distortions. So it's like a really low frequency sound wave,
Mhm.
and that's something that can make you feel like you're experiencing something paranormal when you're not.
Right.
Um, and one kind of neat example is horror movies will sometimes use this, and they use the frequency of fear to cause a sense of dread for their viewers. An
Mhm.
example would be Paranormal Activity from 2007. So the filmmakers incorporated infrasound into their film's soundtrack to subtly induce anxiety and discomfort in viewers. And so, like, this low frequency sound is theorized that it can cause even dizziness and make you feel that there's a presence. And to create kind of an eerie atmosphere, they used that sound in this movie. Um, I know that, and I don't know for sure if the movie The Thing from like the 80s, I
Oh,
don't know
yeah,
if
yeah.
they intentionally like use that, but I just remember there was something about the sound that that's my favorite horror movie, by the way. But
Oh,
there's
yeah.
something about
I
the
actually
sound.
watched it a couple of weeks ago,
Oh, it's so
for
good. I
about the
love it.
100th time.
Yeah, but there's something about the sound of it,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
especially at the beginning of that music, that to me created such an eerie atmosphere, and so I might wanna look that up and see if they actually intentionally, like, did that, but I know in Paranormal Activity, they did that,
Right. Intentionally.
and
Yeah.
yeah. Quick little story about Paranormal Activity real quick. I was in LA back in December,
Mhm.
and I didn't know when we booked the Airbnb, I didn't know who owned it, but the Airbnb we stayed at was owned by the guy from Paranormal
Oh,
Activity.
cool. Nice.
So Mika Sloat, I think is
Yeah.
his name.
Yeah.
And so really cool guy. And he had to come over and help us with some stuff at the Airbnb. He lived right next door and everything. And I was like, he looks familiar. So we were like, asked him what he did. He said he was an actor, and I was like, okay. Well, I didn't ask him like what he had been in or anything. And then I saw he was in the guy from Paranormal Activity.
Oh, nice, nice.
Like
You
I
should have
would,
said,
yeah.
I'm a paranormal investigator, so."
I know, yeah. I didn't say
Right.
anything, but yeah, I wish I had have. But also a couple of other things that can make you feel like you're experiencing
Well,
something paranormal. Talk.
before you move on, let me, mention something else about, infrasound, is
Uh
that
huh.
again has a scientific basis in our evolution, because there are animals that make infrasound. Elephants, tigers, a lot of predators will make a low rumbling noise that we can't hear, but our bodies react to it. So I know tigers, lions, and elephants will make those sounds, like deep
Yeah.
infrasound. So that does have a biological component to us as humans for our survival. So
Hmm.
that could directly tap into those fear responses.
Yeah. That's neat.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. To me, that's
it
fascinating.
is. It really is. That is really cool because
Yeah.
you just get it's like when we hear certain things, we have a visceral response with our bodies,
Yeah.
and the entertainment industry can use that very effectively.
Mhm. Yeah. But yeah, like a few other things, toxic mold,
Mm,
exposure to carbon monoxide poisoning, stuff like that, that can actually cause you to believe that you, or, to feel like you're experiencing something paranormal. I
Hmm.
know someone that had some exposure to mold
Yeah.
and had been having hallucinations and thinking they were seeing spirits, but it ended up being toxic mold.
Ooh,
When they were taken out of that environment, their body was able to kind of heal from that, and everything was fine, because it also became the question of, is something happening to their mind? Like, is it paranormal, or is it, their mind? And it ended up being mold.
ooh,
So that's one thing that you really gotta be careful with as well when you go to locations. Can you know something like that be causing someone to feel like their home is haunted?
right.
um and there was a case study in the 1920s where there was a haunting, but it was later discovered that there was a faulty gas line that was leaking
Ooh,
carbon monoxide.
that'll do
And
it.
so people in the home would experience paranormal things, hallucinations, and all that kind of stuff. And it ended up being carbon monoxide. So, there's, like we said, don't just go into a place thinking that everything you experience is paranormal. You
Exactly.
do have to, think about it in terms of like science. Let's figure out what could be causing certain things, and then get to the investigating part to actually document something,
Yeah,
paranormal.
you have to pre-investigate before you can investigate. And
Hmm.
that's why we get to a location, when it's still daylight, so we have time to walk around, we have time to take readings. We write everything down. We have pieces of paper that literally, what is the EMF? What is this reading? What is this reading? So that we can take those environmental readings and see if we can
Yeah.
if that can explain some things. But yeah, you've
Yeah.
got to pre-investigate before
Yeah.
the sun even goes down. So
Hmm. And just real quick, we wanted to show everybody just a couple of things that we use, some of our equipment that
okay,
we use at investigations. And we don't have to go into each thing for the sake of time, but we've actually talked about some of these in previous podcast episodes. But, we do use, you know, devices for audio, visual, EMF detectors, things like that. Like a couple of our audio devices, we use digital recorders. We use the Spirit Box because that allows us to hear audible anomalies. Visual, like we mentioned before, the SLS,
hmm,
um, EMF technology, which would be like K2 meters, millimeters, REM pods, and even the Boo Bear
hmm.
that affects EMF. And there are some Boo Bears that go according to like touch, kind of
Right,
like our cat balls. We use those for visual.
right.
The cat balls have to be touched, and so dowsing rods is another one that's really interesting because that actually science like they use that to determine if water's under the ground.
Yeah.
And so there's something that affects the dowsing rods to help people find water
Hmm.
located underground. So that shows you that, you know, um, can detect things that we can't. And so, um, sensor equipment, like the geophone detects
Right.
vibration. We have our laser grids, which allows us to see, things like shadow figures and stuff. It helps us to be able to see things that we otherwise might miss. Full spectrum camera, which is now probably one of my favorite things.
It's been useful. It's been useful, definitely.
Yes, thermal cameras,
Hmm.
things like that. But yeah, those are a few things we use. We can go more in depth in another episode about each piece of equipment, but we have talked about them before. But that just shows you we're not just going, blindly into an investigation. We go in and we explore all of these possibilities as far as the environmental factors, things like that.
Right. And
Then
when we show up to an investigation, we've got like 2, 3 truckloads, not full truckloads. We have probably 20, 30 cases of just equipment, and we will bring everything to an investigation most of the time, and then pick and choose depending on what we're doing, where we are, what some of the environmental factors are, and to determine what we're going to use for each individual session.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
sometimes the planning, especially if you've never been there before, you just take what you've got and then figure out what you're going to use when you're there. And some places
Mhm.
you can pre-plan. So
Yeah.
we've had both of those cases where we have no idea what we're getting into, and some like Old South Pittsburgh, we know exactly what we're going to take.
Oh, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, that's one that we always go with a game plan, and it was really neat last time we went. David had printed
Yes.
the whole map
Uh-huh.
and of
Of
each
each
floor.
floor.
He also labeled on there each room, like, what the claims
Hmm.
are and, like, kind of little notes of the history of, like, certain names and, like, stuff like that, and so that was really cool. But, yeah. Well, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Okay, so what would you say to a skeptic? Like, what would your argument be to defend the existence of the paranormal?
Say you've
Like, if
got.
someone said that ghosts aren't real,
Mhm.
like they just come out, that's just their argument. Ghosts aren't real.
Yeah.
What would your argument be to defend the existence of paranormal?
I would say come with us sometime, and we'll try our best to prove it to you. Um, I think it would just be, to look at the evidence, look at some of the evidence we've gotten, look at how we've gotten the evidence. Um, Sometimes you go on feeling, but when you've been jumped on by something and you feel it inside you and like vibrating throughout your entire body, is something's going on. When you capture a man staring at you that is in 1/4 of a second worth of a photo out of a series of three, then you know
Mhm.
something's there. What about you?
I think, yeah, I would say come with us to an investigation. I think that, to me, if I didn't believe in ghosts, but someone let me sit in on a EVP session and we sat there quietly and I heard the silence, but then listened back to a recorder immediately and heard a voice to know
Right.
that, like, the investigators didn't do anything to manipulate sound or whatever, like sit there in real time, listen to it and hear a voice come through. Like, to me, that's something I would love to do for a skeptic, is take them, let them sit in on an EVP session and then play it back immediately in real time,
Yes.
let them
Yeah.
hear an EVP and then see what they have to say. Like,
When they
'cause that,
know, yeah, when they
yeah,
they were there, they know that nothing
mhm,
was being said. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
take someone along on an investigation, but also my argument to them would be to just, show them things we've documented, but then explain to them how we documented it.
Right.
Explain to them our process and show them we're not just saying, "Oh,
Excuse
I'm
me.
sorry, I know you don't feel
Yeah,
good."
sorry. I have a little button when I have to cough, that I
Mhm.
that I hit it, but yeah, you can hear me.
Yeah. Um,
Excuse me. I'm so
yeah.
sorry.
Oh, it's
This is
fine.
this is this is
Um,
this will drive you insane.
yeah. I'm gonna look over to our comment section
Okay.
really quick because we have a few comments. And then let's see. Someone says, "Do you use rechargeable AA, AAA batteries?" And they also asked, "What is our battery budget per investigation?" I will say one thing that, okay, we go through batteries. We do. We go through a lot of batteries. However, we have actually, I know, like Jonathan and I, we have found some rechargeable AA batteries
Mhm.
and AAA batteries, and we just take a whole pack of rechargeable ones with us, and we
Yeah.
just, so that has saved us a lot of money because we can use those rechargeable ones. And then actually, Jonathan commented that same thing. He said, "Yeah, we use rechargeable equipment." Yeah, most of our equipment is rechargeable. There's some things that is not, and you have to use like 9-volt batteries and stuff, and so it gets a little expensive like that. But that's part of it. Ghost hunting is such an expensive
It is.
hobby that we do go through some batteries. We
Well,
go through some money.
we've also been using a lot of rechargeable banks, like big power
Mhm.
banks, and those have come in very handy. I know just extra phone chargers, like the really good phone chargers. I've
Mhm.
powered cameras with those, set them beside equipment and just plug them in. Gives you a lot of extra life. So, yeah, we go through a lot of batteries. I think every investigation means a trip to Walgreens.
Yeah. And I'll say too, if you go to an investigation and it's cold,
Oh, yeah.
take double or triple the amount of batteries because I've noticed when it's cold out, when we do locations where there's no heat or something, it's
Mhm.
just freezing cold. Our batteries drain like
So fast. Mhm.
insanely fast. Like it's crazy. So we always have to take extra of those. And one thing that's gotten really expensive for me is buying extra batteries like for my cameras and stuff
Yeah.
because I can't use, they are rechargeable, but I'll go through them so fast and the other ones can't charge in enough time so I've had to buy extra batteries, which for my good camera, like they get expensive. So
So I
that's the
try,
thing, you gotta budget
yeah,
for some
my cameras, I
batteries.
try to plug them in, and let them run as much as I can to save on battery. But yeah, batteries are a pain.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess, that's about it. And then, like I said, the science of the paranormal, you could really go in depth
Oh,
with
yeah.
it. We're just having a discussion about it, but it's something that you really, really, really could just dive deep into and really study. But yeah, just we just wanted to have a discussion about it. And also ask everyone else, and you can comment or
Hmm.
message us if you have a story or whatever. But have you ever had paranormal experiences that you believe science can or can't explain?
Yeah.
Comment, email us if you want to talk about an experience that you think science can't explain, or if it can explain, just we'd love to hear from you.
And we would also love pictures, evidences that you've captured with your groups. We would love to be able to showcase that on our show. Also, if you are in the area and you have something coming up, we'd love to tag along with you and your group. We want to start really getting to know some of the groups that are in the South, and even beyond the South eventually. So, yeah, just hit us up.
Look,
Ah,
it's the ladybug. It's the
oh, I
ladybug.
knew it. I knew it. I'm psychic, I told you that it was going to land on you.
Yeah,
Except I
I'm
predicted
trying
the
to get
nose.
it. So, oh, I can't get it off of me now. So, but yeah, just I don't know. I've lost my train of thought. I'm trying to play with the ladybug. Oh, I was gonna say, I hope you feel better. I
Thank you,
know
thank
you're
you, thank you. And I
dealing with all of
apologize.
that.
I've had to cut my mic off a couple of times because it's just when you gotta cough, you gotta too cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope nobody else gets RSV because it's horrible. I
Yeah.
hate it.
Mhm.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful evening, and we hope to see all of y'all soon. And just get in touch with us. Crash Media
Yeah.
Paranormal at gmail.com.
Yep.
All
We'll
right.
see you all
All right.
soon.
Have a great night.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos or want to be a part of our live investigations, hit the subscribe button. Also, if you have any ideas for future investigations or want to share your own paranormal encounters, please feel free to leave a comment or send an email to crashmediaparanormal@gmail.com.